Today, a huge step in the second impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump. Let's take a look at what happened. We have the swearing in of the senators, the most unimpartial jury you will ever find. Let's take a look.
At this time, I will administer the oath to the senators in the chamber in conformance with Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6 of the Constitution and the Senate's impeachment rules. Will all senators now rise and raise their right hand? Do you solemnly swear that in all things appertaining to the trial of the impeachment of Donald John Trump, former President of the United States, now pending, you will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and laws, so help you God?
And the man who was swearing them in, Senator Patrick Leahy, we have some breaking news tonight. He has been hospitalized. He was not feeling well, and out of an abundance of caution is what they're saying, he was taken to the hospital tonight for observation to see how he is doing. Senator Leahy, Democrat from Vermont, 80 years old, has been a senator since 1975. As a matter of fact, he's the longest tenured senator in the Senate and will be presiding over the impeachment trial because Chief Justice John Roberts declined to do so. So we'll see how all this impacts everything. In the meantime, the impeachment manager, Senator Jamie Raskin, has gone through some personal tragedy as he gets ready to try former President Donald Trump. Court TV anchor Michael Ayala has more.
Congressman Jamie Raskin is leading the team of 8 House members making the case for impeachment against former President Donald Trump.
The managers on the part of the House of Representatives are here and present and ready to present the article of impeachment, which has been preferred by the House of Representatives against Donald John Trump.
The Democrat from Maryland is taking up the challenge at a time of great personal grief and trauma.
We lost him on the very last day of that god-awful year, 2020, and he left us a note which said, "Please forgive me, my illness won today."
Raskin is talking about his son, Tommy. The 25-year-old Harvard law student suffered from depression and killed himself on New Year's Eve, 2020.
Tommy was a remarkable person. He had overwhelming love for humanity and for our country.
Just one day after Raskin buried his son, he was back on the House floor for what would be a historical moment in more ways than one. The counting of the electoral vote would be interrupted by a mob hoping to shut the count down.
When we went to count the Electoral College votes and it came under that ludicrous attack, I felt my son with me, and I was most concerned with our youngest daughter and my son-in-law, who's married to our other daughter, who were with me that day, who got caught in a room off of the House floor, and between them and me was a rampaging armed mob that could have killed them easily and was banging on the doors where they were hiding under a desk.
When the terror finally abated, 5 people were dead, including a police officer. Raskin blames former President Donald Trump for inciting the riot of January 6, 2021.
And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
We know that the president brought enormous pressure to bear on Vice President Pence to step out of his constitutional oath and outside of his constitutional role simply to reject the results that President Trump didn't like. And Vice President Pence refused to do it, which is why there was a mob that came within seconds of catching him yelling, "Hang Mike Pence."
Raskin, a Harvard Law School graduate and constitutional law and First Amendment professor at American University, was recently sworn into his 3rd term as a congressman in the U.S. House of Representatives. Prior to his time in Congress, Raskin was a 3-term state senator in Maryland, where he also served as the Senate Majority Whip. While a savvy politician, it will be his expertise in constitutional law that will guide the prosecution in this case.
We're putting together a trial plan which is designed to get the truth of all of these events out. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to tell everyone's story, but we're going to be able to tell the story of this attack on America and all of the events that led up to it. This president set out to dismantle and overturn the election results from the 2020 presidential election.
For his part, Trump remains defiant, taking no responsibility for the riot.
If you read my speech, and many people have done it, and I've seen it both in the papers and in the media, on television, it's been analyzed, and people thought that what I said was totally appropriate.
With the collision of Raskin's personal tragedy and the national trauma, colleagues say he is emerging as a unique figure in a polarized Congress. Raskin was praised by the GOP for continuing his work during such a challenging moment. Oklahoma GOP Representative Tom Cole said during a recent House Rules Committee hearing, "I want to tell Mr. Raskin how much we grieve with him for his loss and how much we admire him for continuing to perform his duties under unimaginably difficult circumstances." Besides their son Tommy, who they recently lost, Raskin and his wife have two grown daughters, Tabitha and Hannah. Raskin says he wants to rebuild the nation's confidence and is also motivated by his son's passion for world harmony.
I did it really with my son in my heart and helping lead the way. I feel him in my chest. You know, I'm not going to lose my son at the end of 2020 and lose my country and my republic in 2021. It's not going to happen.
All right, let's bring in Court TV anchor Michael Ayala. Michael, this is such a tragedy. Why didn't he kind of like walk away? I mean, a lot of people would have said, you know, we understand if you want to walk away from all this at this point.
Well, Vinny, as we mentioned, the note that he left to him, his son left to him when he committed suicide. Well, in that note, it actually went on, and it ended with the words that said, "Look after each other, the animals and the global poor for me. All my love, Tommy." It's just tragic, and certainly Raskin could have been forgiven for walking away for a time. But he says that part of his son's departing words really helped him keep pushing forward. And he also said that the letter never said anything about taking time off. He wanted to keep working. And the family also received tremendous support from the Harvard community. Of course, they both went to Harvard. His son's former classmates, all the way back to high school, reached out, talking about what a vibrant force he was at a young age. And a number of politicians, of course, reached out, and President Biden as well. He mentioned that he reached out, and, you know, Biden lost his son back in 2015.
Okay, so what other big developments do we have in the impeachment trial today?
All right, well, Vinny, in addition to being sworn in, the Senate voted today on two proposals. They ratified the rules of order that were negotiated and agreed upon by Senator Charles Schumer and Mitch McConnell. Now, we don't have all the details yet. We'll be getting that in the coming days and, of course, reporting on that. They also voted on a proposal by Senator Rand Paul to force a vote on the constitutionality of the impeachment trial. Now, here is some of what he had to say on the Senate floor.
On June 8th, the New York Post, citing U.S. Justice Department statistics, reported that more than 700 law enforcement officers were injured during the Antifa Black Lives Matter riots. There were at least 19 murders, including 77-year-old retired police officer David Dorn. Yet Democrats insist on applying a test of incitement to a Republican that they refuse to apply to themselves. I want the Democrats to raise their hands if they have ever given a speech that says, take, back, fight for your country. Who hasn't used the words fight figuratively? And are we going to put every politician in jail? Are we going to impeach every politician who has used the words fight figuratively in a speech? Shame. Shame on these angry, unhinged partisans who are putting forth this sham impeachment, deranged by their hatred of the former president.
Now, many legal scholars are pretty settled that it is okay, according to the Constitution, to impeach someone who has left office. But the motion was killed by a 55-45 vote. All the Democrats voted for it, voted against it, meaning that 45 of 50 Republicans voted for the proposal, which really gives a good indication of how the majority of Republicans feel about this process. They are against it, at the very least, because they think it's unconstitutional. Now, that doesn't bode well for a conviction. The only Republicans to vote against the proposal were the usual suspects: Mitt Romney, Ben Sasse of Nebraska, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. And of course, as we've mentioned many times, 17 Republicans will be needed to convict. And a number of Republicans did say that it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't go into the proceeding with an open mind now that the constitutionality of the trial has been voted on, but it still doesn't bode well.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It looks like, and again, I said the most unimpartial jury ever is what you have, because all the Democrats, we know how they're going to vote, and we know how most of the Republicans are going to vote ahead of time. All right, you've got still circulating around here the threat of potential violence that is out there. What's going on that front?
Well, Vinny, there will be, of course, National Guard on duty during the proceedings, around 5,000 troops down from 25,000 now. They'll be guarding the Capitol, as it is a legitimate concern. Now, considering the attack on the Capitol, the open threats to former Vice President Mike Pence, threats on the lives of Anthony Fauci, and even the death plot that we reported on right here on Court TV involving Michigan's Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer, there has been a suggestion floated that the senators should consider a secret vote on the impeachment article when the time comes. Now, understanding the climate of the country right now, the senators might vote their conscience, but, could they vote out of fear? It's possible. Well, as a result, a few prominent names in the political and legal community have floated an idea that the impeachment vote should be done in private. Robert Reich, he's a Clinton administration labor secretary, he tweeted that the February vote in the Senate on whether to convict Trump should be a secret ballot in order to, 1, protect the safety of senators, and 2, allow them to vote their consciences. Pass it on. The tweet garnered a response from none other than the esteemed Harvard constitutional law professor Lawrence Tribe, who responded by saying, a secret ballot would probably convict and ban Trump 100-0. I don't know if that's true, but guess it's not in the cards, though it'd be the fairest way to proceed, as with any ordinary jury. But of course, Vinny, senators are not ordinary jurors. As you've mentioned, the Senate rules for impeachment proceedings require the doors of the Senate to be open during the proceedings, and that when the time comes to vote, it could be done in the following manner. The presiding officer shall first state the question, which will be the article. Thereafter, each senator, as his name is called, shall rise in his place and answer guilty or not guilty. Now, it's an interesting idea, so I checked with Neil Kinkoff, a constitutional law professor at Georgia State University, to get his opinion on this idea of a secret vote.
So I understand the impulse, right? We want senators to vote their conscience and to vote what their conscience tells them is in the best interests of the nation. But having said that, I think it would be deeply inconsistent with constitutional norms for the Senate to hold a secret vote. For one thing, the Senate rules provide specifically for a public vote, right? And they specifically provide for senators to speak and speak only once during the Senate impeachment proceedings, and that's when they vote either guilty or not guilty. Even if we set that aside, because of course, rules can be changed, it would be inconsistent with the way the Senate generally operates, right? Which is to take public votes because their legitimacy depends on their accountability, right? Ultimately, they are our representatives, and we're supposed to hold them accountable if they take positions that we don't approve of, right? And impeachment and the impeachment trial would be among the most serious actions that members of the Senate take. And so it'd be inconsistent with that kind of accountability that's built into the Constitution. I think even more specifically with respect to impeachment, there are very few checks on the impeachment power. The Supreme Court has made it clear that it won't review the Senate's decisions. And so the only real mechanism for keeping the Senate accountable is that their proceedings be in public, and most fundamentally, that their vote be made in public. And so from that perspective, I think it's deeply problematic for the Senate to contemplate voting in secret.
Now, of course, we know that the Senate rules are more guidelines rather than rules, and the senators can vote to change them any way they see fit. And all it would take is for the Democratic senators to agree and for Vice President Harris to be the 51st vote in favor. However, if Republicans didn't like the idea, the Constitution does provide a way out. If 1/5 of the senators, or 20, decided against it, they could force an open vote. All that being said, it's hard to imagine a scenario, Vinny, where the Senate would allow for this to be a secret ballot.
Yeah, and would that secret ballot be done by mail or in person? How would they exactly?
No, it would be done in person. It would be done there. They would close the door to the chamber. That oftentimes they'll decide to close the door to the chamber during deliberations, for instance.
Right.
They've done that in the past. Well, they would just close the door for the vote. One of the other things that you have to remember is keeping these votes secret is very difficult. That someone would leak something somewhere, and this thing could get really out of control.
Yeah, and I'd also be careful with changing the voting rules, now, because that's kind of ironically how we got here in the first place. I mean, okay. Michael Ayala, great reporting. It's unbelievable. You never know what's going to happen.